The chamber floated in the dead space between stars, a massive ring of metal and glass that had witnessed 3,000 years of galactic politics. Inside, representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, arranged by the ancient hierarchy that placed humans at the very bottom tier. The air recyclers hummed with a dozen different atmospheric preferences, creating subtle pressure zones that kept everyone comfortable in their own way. Stood alone in the petitioner's circle at the chamber's center. The spotlight made her small frame look even more isolated against the towering seats that rose in tiers around her. She wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, no decorations or medals, just a small pin with the blue planet on her collar. Her face remained calm, almost pleasant, as if she were waiting for tea rather than judgment. Council Speaker clicked his mandibles together in what his species considered a gesture of authority. The being rose from his elevated throne, his 6 legs carrying him forward with mechanical precision. His translator box buzzed to life, turning his clicks and whistles into common speech that echoed through the chamber. The Galactic Council has reached its final decision regarding the human question, announced. His compound eyes glittered in the artificial light. Your species has demonstrated an alarming pattern of expansion and militarization. You ignore our guidance. You push into territories we have designated as restricted. You build weapons when we counsel peace. Listened without expression. She had heard these accusations before, in 100 different meetings over the past 5 years. The other species around the chamber watched with various expressions of satisfaction or bored indifference. The humans were about to be put in their place, finally and completely. Therefore, continued, the Council issues the following ultimatum. Within 72 standard hours, humanity must surrender all military vessels to Council custody. You will dismantle your defense networks. You will accept vassal species status under the supervision of the Concordat. Your colonies will be restricted to your home system. Any deviation from these terms will result in enforcement action. The chamber filled with approving sounds from various species. Clicks, whistles, growls, and electronic tones blended into a symphony of consensus. This was how the galaxy worked. The powerful decided, the weak obeyed, and order continued. Tactical Director leaned forward from his seat, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been a smile. We are being generous, human. Your species could have been eliminated. Instead, we offer you protection and guidance. You should be grateful. Finally moved, she reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small data chip, holding it up where the chamber's scanners could see it clearly. I would like to present Earth's counter-proposal, she said, her voice steady and clear. His mandibles clicked in irritation. There is no counter-proposal. You will comply or face consequences. That is the nature of reality. The nature of reality, repeated softly. She placed the data chip back in her pocket. May I speak freely, Council Speaker? If you must waste our time with protests. How long have you been restricting human expansion? Asked. I've been going through the historical records. It started 247 years ago, didn't it? When our first colony ship tried to settle the system, you told us it was a dangerous region. Then when we tried Barnard's star, you said it was too close to space. Every time we reached out, you pushed us back. Every time we asked why, you gave different reasons. Hissed, your species expands too quickly. You breed too fast. You are too aggressive, too curious, too ambitious. You needed to be controlled before you became a threat. So you admit it, said. This isn't about our weapons or our colonies. You've been afraid of us from the beginning, afraid of what we might become if given the chance. Afraid, laughed a sound like breaking glass. We are cautious. There is a difference, primitive. His hand moved to her collar. The small pin with Earth's image was actually a recording device, something the Council's security had never thought to check. It had been recording every word, every admission, every casual insult. In the Milky Way's network of human settlements, millions were listening right now. You call us primitive, said. You call us dangerous. You laugh at our proposals for equal representation. You've made your position very clear, Council Speaker. I want to thank you for that. Humanity needed to understand exactly where we stand in your eyes. She turned slowly, looking at each section of the chamber in turn. For 300 years, we tried to be good galactic citizens. We followed your rules. We accepted your restrictions. We believed that patience and goodwill would eventually earn us respect. We were wrong. You dare to lecture this council? A delegate shouted from the upper tiers. No, said. I'm stating facts. You had centuries to treat us as equals. You chose otherwise. That was your decision, and you'll have to live with the consequences. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. The consequences fall on you, human. You have 72 hours to comply, not 1 minute more. 72 hours, repeated. She smiled then, a small expression that didn't reach her eyes. Humanity remembers, Council Speaker. We remember every promise you broke, every opportunity you us. Every time you made us feel small, we remember it all. She walked toward the exit without waiting for dismissal. This was an unthinkable breach of protocol. In 3,000 years, no petitioner had ever left the chamber without explicit permission. The delegates erupted in outrage, their various species making sounds of shock and anger. Didn't look back. The doors opened before her and she stepped through into the corridor beyond. Her personal communicator was already active, though she kept it concealed. A single message appeared on the screen: Fleet mobilization complete. Standing by. She pressed her thumb against the device, sending a pre-programmed response. Just one word: execute. Behind her, the council continued their outraged discussions. They would spend hours debating her rudeness, her defiance, her complete lack of proper respect. They would never imagine that while they talked, Commander Park was already moving the Earth Defense Fleet into position. Not to fight. Fighting was what the Council expected, what they were prepared for. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the best response to an impossible situation wasn't courage or surrender. Sometimes the best response was to change the game entirely. The construction facility floated in the shadow of Saturn's rings, hidden from casual observation by the planet's massive bulk and the debris field that surrounded it. From the outside, it looked like a standard mining operation, the kind that humans had been running for decades to extract rare elements from the ring system. The Council's occasional inspection teams had visited twice and found nothing interesting, just workers extracting ice and minerals. Lee stood in the command center, watching the master display that showed the true scope of the facility. Behind the mining equipment and processing plants were the shipyards, massive construction bays where humanity's future was being built. 43 generation ships, each one capable of carrying 1 million people in cold sleep. 62 massive cargo vessels designed to transport the equipment and materials needed to build a new civilization. And at the center of it all, the void gates. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the exhaustion that came from 80 years of secrecy. Not her personal 80 years, of course, was only 42, but the project had been running since before she was born, passed from one generation of engineers to the next like a sacred trust. Her own mother had worked on the early theoretical designs before she died. Her father had overseen the construction of the first prototype gate before his retirement. Final calculations are complete, said from his station across the room. The astrophysicist looked almost as tired as felt. The Andromeda Gate network will function as designed. 97% probability of successful transition. Only 97, asked. The universe doesn't like certainty, replied with a slight smile. But yes, it will work. We've tested it 3 times now with the probe ships. All of them arrived safely and sent back confirmation signals. Thought about those probe ships, small vessels carrying no crew, just instruments and transmitters. They had passed through the experimental gates and emerged 2.5 million light-years away in the Andromeda Galaxy. The signals had taken years to come back, traveling the old-fashioned way at light speed, but they had come back. 3 successful tests. 3 confirmations that the impossible was actually possible. The door opened and Han walked in, the security chief's face set in its usual expression of controlled worry. "We have a situation," she said. "A council inspection team just filed a request to visit the Saturn facilities next month." "Next month," said. "That's after the deadline." "I know, but if we tell them no, they'll get suspicious. If we say yes, they'll find empty facilities and realize something happened. Then we'll be long gone by the time they arrive," said. "Let them find whatever they find." Nodded slowly. "I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. Still feels strange to stop hiding after all this time." The project had begun 80 years ago, right after the Treaty of Broken Promises. That was what humans called it, though the official council name was something longer and more diplomatic. It was the treaty where the council had formally humanity the right to expand beyond a certain radius from Earth. Too aggressive, they said. Too dangerous. Too much, too fast. The human governments had signed the treaty because they had no choice, but they had also started planning. Small plans at first, just theoretical studies. What if we needed to evacuate Earth? What if we had to move our entire species? How would we do it? Those theoretical studies had become serious research. The research had become experimental prototypes. The prototypes had become construction projects, and all of it had been hidden from the council for 8 decades. "Show me the timeline again," said. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the entire Sol system, with lines connecting Earth and its colonies to the hidden gates scattered throughout. Numbers appeared beside each location, counting down. "We have 64 hours until the council's deadline," explained. "The evacuation will begin in 12 hours. Earth's major cities first, then the smaller settlements. Luna Base and Mars colonies will go in the second wave. The belt stations and outer settlements in the third wave. Total evacuation time, 70 hours. 70 hours to move 43 billion people," said softly. "It still sounds impossible when you say it out loud." "Everything about this project is impossible," replied. "The council said faster-than-light gates couldn't work with their understanding of physics. They said generating stable wormholes required more energy than a star produces. They said calculating safe exit points across intergalactic distances was mathematically impossible." "They were wrong about a lot of things," said. The display zoomed in on one of the gates, showing its structure in detail. It looked like a massive ring, 10 kilometers in diameter, covered in intricate patterns of machinery and power conduits. The design had taken 30 years to develop and another 20 to test. Human engineers had worked in secret, sharing information through carefully coded messages and hidden networks. They had built a parallel scientific community that the council never knew existed. "I want to show you something," said. He pulled up an old video file dated 80 years ago. It showed a meeting room filled with serious-looking people in old-fashioned clothes. "This is the first planning committee. Watch what they say." The video played. An elderly woman was speaking, her voice firm despite her age. "We cannot fight the council. We don't have the military strength and we never will, but we don't have to fight, we just have to leave. Let them have their galaxy. We'll find our own." A man responded in the video. "It would take thousands of years to reach another galaxy with conventional drives, multiple generations. We'd need ships that could sustain life for." "Then we build them," the woman said. "And while we're building them, we research new drives, new engines, new physics. We have time. They've given us at least a century before they push us too far." She had been wrong about that. The council's patience had run out faster than expected. But the project had progressed faster than expected too, thanks to people like who had made breakthrough after breakthrough. "Those people," said, watching the old video. "Most of them never saw this day. They died believing we might never finish." "But they worked anyway," said. They passed it to the next generation, and that generation passed it to us, and now we actually finish it. A notification appeared on screen. It was from who had been one of the first volunteers for the colony ships. He was 89 years old now, had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. His message was simple. I'm ready. We're all ready. Just give the word. Looked at the timeline again. 12 hours until evacuation began. 70 hours until everyone was through the gates. 72 hours until the council's deadline. We're going to make it, she said. After 80 years of preparation, we're actually going to make it. The council thinks we're fortifying our defenses, said. Our misinformation campaign has them convinced we're preparing for a last stand. Every spy they have is reporting that humans are digging in for a fight. Good, said. Let them think that. Let them prepare for war. By the time they realize what's really happening, we'll be gone. She pulled up a view of Earth on the main display. The blue planet turned slowly, beautiful and ancient, home to every human who had ever lived. Until now. In 70 hours it would be empty, a monument to humanity's past, abandoned but not forgotten. We'll come back someday, said quietly, reading her thoughts. Maybe in 1,000 years, maybe 10,000, when we're strong enough that the council can't push us around anymore. Maybe, agreed. But first we have to leave, and we have to do it perfectly, no mistakes, no one left behind. Commander Park stood on the bridge of the flagship Determination, watching the tactical display that showed every human ship in the Sol system. 300 military vessels, arranged in defensive formations around Earth and its colonies. To any observer, it looked like humanity was preparing for war. Every sensor reading, every communication intercept, every piece of data suggested that the humans were going to fight rather than surrender. It was all theater, a carefully choreographed performance designed to keep the council's attention focused in exactly the wrong direction. Status report, said calmly. All ships in position, his tactical officer replied. Defensive grids powered up and active, point defense systems online. To anyone watching, we look ready for battle. And the real evacuation. Proceeding on schedule. Earth's transport hubs are processing 2 million people per hour. Mars and Luna are slightly ahead of schedule. The belt stations began their departure sequence 10 minutes ago. Nodded, his face showing none of the tension he felt. 50 years in the military had taught him how to remain calm when everything depended on perfect execution. And this had to be perfect. One mistake, one alarm raised too early, and the council would intervene before humanity could escape. On Earth, the evacuation was happening in plain sight, disguised as something completely ordinary. The transportation systems were running at full capacity, but the council's observers had been told it was a military mobilization drill. Millions of people boarding trains and shuttles, heading to spaceports and launch facilities. Nothing unusual for a species preparing to resist council enforcement. Shin held her daughter's hand as they moved through the processing center in Seoul. The massive facility was filled with families, everyone carrying just 2 bags each. That was the limit. 2 bags per person, containing whatever they valued most from their entire lives on Earth. Mama, why can't we bring more? Her daughter asked, clutching a stuffed animal. Because we need room for everyone, explained gently. Millions of people are traveling with us. We all have to share the space. Her daughter seemed to accept this, though she looked sad about leaving her toys behind. Felt the same way about leaving her home, her city, the planet where her family had lived for generations. But she also felt something else. Hope, fear, excitement. They were about to do something no humans had ever done before. The processing center was organized chaos. Volunteers in orange vests directed traffic, scanners checked identification, medical stations gave everyone a final health screening. Everything moved with surprising efficiency considering the scale of the operation. His family had been preparing for this for months. ever since the government briefings began explaining the Exodus project to the general population. Not everyone had believed it at first. Leave Earth, travel to another galaxy. It sounded like science fiction. But the government had shown the proof, the working void gates, the successful test flights, and more importantly, they had explained why. The Council would never let humanity grow, never let them explore freely, never treat them as equals. The choice was simple: stay and accept permanent second-class status, or leave and build something new. Next group, a volunteer called out. His family moved forward with several dozen others, entering a large chamber where a shuttle waited. The craft was designed for comfort rather than speed, with seats that would recline into sleep position for the journey to the gate. Across the city, the same scene was playing out in 1,000 different locations. Millions of people saying quiet goodbyes to their world, then boarding transports that would carry them to orbit. The spaceports were running continuous launches, ships rising into the sky in steady streams. The Council's observer satellites recorded it all, sending back data that confirmed the expected military mobilization. Observer sat in his ship above Earth's North Pole, monitoring the communications channels and energy signatures. His species, prided themselves on their observational skills. Nothing escaped their notice. Nothing surprised them. The humans are definitely preparing for resistance, he reported to the Council. Massive troop movements, civilian population being relocated to hardened shelters, energy signatures consistent with charging defensive weapons. They're going to fight. Predictable, came the response from Council headquarters. How long until they realize fighting is hopeless? I estimate they'll attempt one defensive engagement when our enforcement fleet arrives. After their initial defeat, they'll surrender. Typical primitive species response pattern. Settled back in his observation chair, confident in his analysis. He had studied human behavior for years. He knew how they thought, how they reacted to stress. They were brave but not stupid. One demonstration of Council military superiority would break their will to resist. He had no idea that every human ship he was watching, every energy signature he was recording, every communication he was intercepting was specifically designed to reinforce his expectations. The real story was happening in frequencies he wasn't monitoring, in hidden facilities he didn't know existed, through gate networks his species considered theoretically impossible. Nam stood in the Library of Humanity, a massive data center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Gobi Desert. Around him, quantum storage arrays flickered with activity as they processed the largest data upload in human history. Every book, every song, every movie, every piece of art humanity had ever created. Every scientific paper, every historical record, every personal diary that people had chosen to contribute. We're at 93%, his assistant said. Final uploads will complete in 4 hours. Watch the progress bars climb. This was his responsibility, his sacred duty. Future generations would need this information. They would need to know where they came from, what their ancestors had accomplished, what Earth had been like. They would need their history. What about the physical artifacts? He asked. Loaded and secured. 300 museums worth of material in climate-controlled storage. We couldn't take everything, but we took representative samples, enough for future generations to understand their heritage. The items ranged from ancient stone tools to modern technology. Paintings, sculptures, manuscripts, instruments, clothing, tools. The cultural treasure of an entire species, packed carefully and ready to travel across the void between galaxies. Back on Earth's surface, stood in the command center for the evacuation, watching the same countdowns that was monitoring from Saturn. 12 hours had passed since she left the council chamber. 60 hours remained until the deadline. How are the numbers? She asked. Earth is 70% evacuated, came the reply. Luna base is complete. Mars is at 85%. All outer settlements are either complete or ahead of schedule. Any council activity. Their observer ships are maintaining position. We're picking up increased communications between them and headquarters, but it's all consistent with them preparing to enforce the ultimatum. They have no idea what's really happening. Allowed herself a small smile. The misdirection had worked better than she had dared hope. Every element of the evacuation had been disguised as something else. Transport launches looked like military deployments. Mass movements looked like civil defense preparations. The activation of the void gates was hidden by interference patterns that made them look like defensive shield generators. "Status on the fleet?" she asked. "Commander reports all ships maintaining defensive positions. The Council fleet is gathering at the edge of the system, preparing to make their entrance at the 72-hour mark." Perfect timing. The Council wanted a dramatic demonstration of power. They would arrive expecting to find humans cowering behind inadequate defenses, ready to be crushed or accept surrender. Instead, they would find empty space and silent planets. The evacuation continued through the night, through the next day, through the following night. Families boarding ships, cities emptying, bases shutting down. Every hour brought the total closer to completion. Every hour brought humanity closer to freedom. And her family were in cold sleep now, aboard one of the generation ships floating near the Jupiter gate. Around them, 1,000,000 other people slept in specially designed pods, their bodies preserved and protected for the journey ahead. The ship's automated systems monitored every vital sign, ready to wake anyone if problems arose. The gate activated with a pulse of energy that bent space itself. The generation ship moved forward, approaching the shimmering circle that would carry it to Andromeda. Sensors recorded the transition, instruments measured every variable, but to the sleeping passengers, nothing changed. They simply continued their dreams as their ship passed from one galaxy to another. One by one, the ships went through. One by one, humanity's future crossed into the void. Council Speaker reviewed the reports from the Sol system with satisfaction. The humans were behaving exactly as expected. Their military forces were positioned defensively. Their civilian population was being moved into protected locations. Everything indicated they would attempt a futile resistance before accepting the inevitable surrender. "The enforcement fleet is ready," Tactical Director reported. 200 warships, fully armed and prepared, more than enough to overwhelm any defense the humans can mount. "How long until the deadline expires?" asked. 3 hours. We'll make our entrance exactly on time. Maximum dramatic effect. The humans will see our fleet arrive and realize their situation is hopeless. Clicked his mandibles in approval. This would be a lesson for the entire galaxy. Any species that Council authority would face overwhelming force. The humans would be broken, made into an example, and order would be maintained. "What about their ambassador?" another Council member asked. "The one who was so disrespectful in the chamber." "Return to Earth," said. "Our observers report she's in their command center, probably coordinating their pathetic defense. She'll witness her species' defeat firsthand." The Council chamber filled with sounds of approval from various delegates. The human problem would soon be solved. Their expansion would be stopped permanently. Their ambitions would be crushed. The galaxy would continue as it had for 3,000 years, with proper species in their proper places. 3 hours later, the enforcement fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 200 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a planet. Admiral commanded the fleet from her flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed any human military vessel. "All ships battle formation," she ordered. "Advance toward Earth at half speed. Weapons charged but not targeting. Let them see us coming." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a display of overwhelming military power designed to break enemy morale before the first shot was fired. Admiral had fought in 17 conflicts during her long career. She knew how to end wars before they started. but something felt wrong. The sensor readings weren't matching what she expected. "Where are their ships?" she asked her tactical officer. "I'm only seeing automated defense platforms." "Checking now, Admiral." The officer's hands moved across his console, pulling up detailed scans. "The defense platforms are active but not crewed. Energy signatures suggest automated systems only." "Expand the scan. Where are their military vessels?" The tactical officer worked quickly, his expression growing confused. "Admiral, I'm not finding any human ships in orbit. No large power signatures. No fleet formations. Just automated platforms and satellites." Admiral felt a cold weight in her chest. "Scan the planet. How many life signs?" The officer's hands moved faster now, urgency creeping into his movements. "Scanning all major population centers. Beijing. Empty. Delhi. Empty. Empty. Admiral, I'm not finding anyone." "That's impossible. Scan again. Expand search parameters." More ships joined the sensor sweep, combining their detection systems for maximum coverage. They scanned every continent, every city, every settlement. They checked Mars, Luna, the asteroid belt, every human colony in the system. The results were consistent across every scan. Empty, all of them were empty. "Get me observer," Admiral ordered. "Now." His face appeared on the communication screen, his features tight with confusion. "Admiral, I don't understand what happened. Yesterday they were here. Millions of ships, troop movements, defensive preparations. I documented everything." "Show me the recordings." Transmitted the data files. Admiral watched hours of footage compressed into minutes. She saw exactly what had reported. Massive activity, ships launching, energy signatures, all the signs of a military mobilization. But as she watched more carefully, something became clear. "These ships," she said slowly, "they're all heading outward, away from Earth, not toward defensive positions. And these energy signatures you marked as defensive weapons. Pull up the spectral analysis." The data appeared. Admiral's three hearts sank as she recognized the patterns. "These aren't weapons. These are gate activations. They built transit gates." "Impossible." His voice cut in over the command channel. He had been listening to the reports. "Human technology can't create stable gates. They don't have the physics knowledge." "Apparently they do," Admiral said quietly. She looked at the empty planet on her display. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and abandoned. "The question is, where did they go?" The fleet spread out through the system, searching for clues. They found the gates quickly enough. Massive rings of machinery, now shut down and cooling, scattered throughout the Sol system. Each one had been used recently. The residual energy signatures were clear. "Can we determine their destination?" demanded over the communication link. Admiral's science officer shook his head. "The gates have been deactivated and parts of their navigation systems destroyed. We can determine they were using some form of stable wormhole technology, but calculating the exit points would require the original programming." "How is this possible?" another council member asked. "We would have detected construction on this scale. We would have seen the research, the development." Han could have answered that question, but she was 2.5 million light-years away now, smiling as she watched the security recordings of council ships searching empty human facilities. Every piece of research had been done in hidden laboratories. Every component had been constructed in secret facilities disguised as ordinary industrial operations. Every test had been conducted under cover of some innocent activity. 80 years of perfect operational security. 80 years of making the council see exactly what they expected to see. It was life's work, and it had succeeded beyond even her hopes. Back in the Sol system, council scientists were examining the remains of one of the gates. The technology was fascinating, far more advanced than they had believed humans capable of achieving. It combined principles from multiple disciplines in ways that violated several fundamental laws the Council had considered unbreakable. "This is sophisticated engineering," one scientist reported. "They weren't just following known physics. They were developing entirely new theories. This represents decades of high-level research." "While we were monitoring their public scientific institutions," another scientist added, "they must have been running a completely separate research network, hidden, coordinated, more advanced than anything in the known galaxy." Speaker listened to these reports in growing disbelief. The humans had deceived them, not through some clever trick or momentary deception, but through decades of systematic misdirection. Every inspection had been fooled. Every spy had been fed false information. Every assumption had been exploited. "How many humans are we talking about?" he demanded. "According to the last census, 43 billion individuals," came the answer. "If they evacuated completely, that means 43 billion people disappeared in approximately 70 hours. The number was staggering. Moving 43 billion people through gates fast enough to complete the evacuation in 70 hours required coordination and efficiency that exceeded anything the Council had ever achieved. It meant the humans had planned every detail perfectly, had built enough capacity to process millions of people per hour, had organized their entire species for this single purpose. "Find them," ordered. "Search every known gate destination. Check every colony world, every trading post, every location they might have fled to." "Speaker," Admiral said carefully, "if they built these gates themselves, they could have programmed any destination. They could be anywhere in the galaxy, or beyond it." "Beyond?" Mandibles clicked rapidly. "You mean other galaxies?" "The energy signatures suggest gates capable of intergalactic distances. I can't confirm it without more data, but yes, they could have left the Milky Way entirely." The Council chamber fell silent. In 3,000 years of galactic politics, no species had ever done anything like this. Wars had been fought, treaties had been negotiated, rebellions had been crushed, but no species had ever simply left, taking their entire civilization with them. Then the transmission began. It appeared on every Council communication channel simultaneously, a recorded message that played in a loop. His face appeared, calm and composed. "Members of the Galactic Council," she said, "you gave us 72 hours to surrender or be destroyed. We needed only 71 hours to leave. You told us we were too primitive to survive without your guidance. We built technology you claimed was impossible. You said we would never be more than vassals. We chose to be something else entirely." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We're not declaring war. We're not seeking revenge. We're simply leaving. This galaxy belongs to you now. We hope you govern it wisely. Perhaps someday in the distant future we'll meet again. Until then, goodbye." The message ended. The loop restarted. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched the transmission and tried to understand what had just happened. The humans had vanished, completely and utterly, leaving behind only empty worlds and a message that echoed through the void. The Andromeda Galaxy spread across the observation window like a field of diamonds on black velvet. Stood in the command center of New Terra, the first permanent human settlement in their new home, watching the sunrise over an alien world that would soon feel familiar. 3 months had passed since the Exodus. 3 months since 43 billion humans had crossed the void between galaxies and started over. The transition had been smoother than anyone had dared hope. The generation ships had arrived safely. The gate network had functioned perfectly. And the planets they had identified through probe missions were everything they had hoped for. New Terra was a beautiful world, slightly larger than Earth, with 3 moons and a single stable sun. The atmosphere was breathable, the temperature was comfortable, and the ecosystem was compatible with human life. There were no native intelligent species to displace, no competing claims to the world. It was simply there, waiting for them. "Morning, Governor," Lee said, entering the command center with a cup of coffee in each hand. She offered one too. The latest reports from the other colonies are excellent. Everyone is settling in well. 312 colonies now, asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. 314 as of an hour ago. The colony ship promised just established settlements on twin worlds in the Perseus arm. Both planets are perfect for agriculture. Shook her head in wonder. In 3 months, humanity had spread across a region of space larger than all their territory in the Milky Way. Without council restrictions, without bureaucratic delays, without having to ask permission for every expansion, they were growing faster than anyone had predicted. "How's the gate reconstruction going?" asked. "Ahead of schedule," replied. "We've successfully built 7 new void gates using local resources. We can now move between colonies almost instantly. No more months-long journeys. The network is becoming efficient." Looked tired but happy. The exhaustion that had weighed on her during the final days before the exodus had been replaced by the satisfaction of seeing her life's work succeed. The gates functioned. The technology worked. And now, freed from the need for secrecy, they could improve and expand it. Commander Park entered the command center, his military uniform replaced by more casual civilian clothing. In the new society they were building, the distinction between military and civilian was becoming less important. Everyone had their role to play. "The defense initiative is operational," he reported. "We've established sensor networks around all major colonies. If anyone follows us here, we'll know about it months before they arrive, and we'll be ready." "Do you think the council will come?" asked. Considered the question. "Eventually, not soon but eventually. They'll spend years debating it, trying to reverse engineer our gates, arguing about whether it's worth the effort. But yes, someday they'll come. When they do, we'll be ready." The defense network was building wasn't aggressive. It was designed purely for protection and early warning. Humanity had learned from the Council's mistakes. They wouldn't try to dominate or control. They would simply ensure that no one could threaten them the way the Council had. Shin walked through the streets of Settlement 7, holding her daughter's hand. The buildings were new but already felt lived in. Neighbors called greetings from their doorways. Children played in the parks. Gardens were starting to bloom with both earth plants and compatible native species. Her daughter had adapted quickly to the new world. She barely remembered Earth now, just vague impressions of the evacuation. For her, this was home. New Terra was the only world that mattered. "Mama, look," her daughter said, pointing up at the sky. 3 moons were visible even in daylight, a sight that still amazed even after 3 months. "Why do we have so many moons?" "Because we're in a new place," explained. "Different from Earth, but just as good." "I like it here," her daughter decided. "It's pretty." Smiled. That simple acceptance summed up the entire human experience in Andromeda. This is different, but it's ours. It's home. Across the colonies, similar scenes were playing out. Farmers were establishing crops in alien soil that proved surprisingly fertile. Builders were constructing cities using local materials and new architectural styles. Scientists were studying native ecosystems, discovering new species, mapping new worlds. Artists were inspired by new landscapes, new colors, new possibilities. And in hidden facilities, researchers were pushing the boundaries even further. His team was working on gates that could span even greater distances, was studying the fundamental physics of the universe, asking questions that the Council had considered forbidden. Engineers were designing ships that could travel between galaxies without gates, giving humanity even more options for expansion. "We're receiving a transmission from the Milky Way," a technician announced suddenly. "Council frequencies. It took 3 months to reach us at light speed." Looked up, play it. A holographic display activated, showing Council speaker. He looked older somehow, his mandibles moving less confidently than before. "This message is directed to the human government in exile," said formally. The Galactic Council wishes to open diplomatic negotiations. We recognize that errors were made in our previous dealings with your species. We believe a mutually beneficial arrangement can be reached. We invite you to send representatives to discuss terms for your return to the Milky Way." The message ended. The command center fell silent. "Return," said finally. "They think we want to return." Laughed quietly. "They still don't understand. They think this was about getting better terms from them. They think we evacuated to gain negotiating leverage." "Should we respond?" someone asked. Thought about it for a long moment. Around her, humanity's future was being built, free from restrictions, free from condescension, free from a council that had never seen them as equals. They had built something new here, something better. "Yes," she said finally, "we should respond, but not now. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Maybe in a few decades when we're fully established, maybe in a century, we'll consider their request for negotiations on our schedule, not theirs." "What will we tell them?" asked. "The truth, that we're happy here, that we're thriving, that we don't need their galaxy anymore. They can keep it. We have our own now." The transmission went out 3 months later, carried by a probe ship programmed to return to the Milky Way and broadcast on Council frequencies. The message was simple. "Your request for negotiations has been received. We will consider it. Do not expect a quick response. We are busy building our future." By the time the Council received that message, humanity had established 500 colonies. By the time they could send a reply, there were 1,000. The numbers grew exponentially, limited only by the speed at which new worlds could be surveyed and settled. In the Milky Way, the Council's authority began to crack. Other species watched what the humans had done and started asking questions. Why did we let the Council restrict us? Why do we accept their authority? If the humans could leave, why can't we? Some species began reaching out secretly to the colonies, asking for information about the gates, about the technology, about how to achieve what humanity had achieved. Carefully considered each request, weighing the risks and benefits of sharing their knowledge. "We should help them," she told her council. "Not all of them, not the aggressive ones or the dangerous ones, but species that are peaceful, that just want the freedom to grow and explore. We should share what we've learned." "That will make the council furious," pointed out. "Yes," agreed with a slight smile, "it will." The first new species arrived in Andromeda 6 years after the human exodus. They were a peaceful race of aquatic beings who had been restricted by the Council for centuries. Humanity helped them establish colonies on water worlds, sharing gate technology and colonization expertise. More species followed, creating a new confederation of free civilizations. 20 years after the Exodus, a council delegation finally arrived at the edge of space, requesting permission to enter and negotiate. They traveled in a single ship, unarmed, showing none of the arrogance that had characterized their previous dealings with humanity. Now gray-haired but still sharp, met them in a conference room overlooking New Terra's capital city. The city had grown into a magnificent metropolis, home to 20 million people, a center of art and science and culture. "Thank you for seeing us," the council representative said humbly. "We come to discuss mutual interests between our peoples." "You can discuss," said calmly. "We'll listen, but understand something clearly. We're not coming back. Andromeda is our home now. We've built something here that we could never build under your authority. We're happy, we're free, we're growing." "We understand," the lead representative said. "We're not asking you to return. We're asking for trade agreements, technology exchange, perhaps an alliance against common threats. The galaxy is changing. Without humanity, without your perspective, we've realized we made mistakes." "Many mistakes," agreed, "for centuries." "Yes, we're trying to do better now. We've reformed many of our policies. Other species have more freedom, but we're still learning. We hoped you might be willing to help us learn." looked at her advisors, at N and the others who had made the exodus possible. She saw in their faces the same thing she felt. Not anger anymore, not resentment, just the quiet satisfaction of people who had proven themselves and had nothing left to prove. "We'll consider it," she said finally. "Send us your proposals. We'll review them carefully. If we can find terms that benefit both our peoples, we'll negotiate, but it will be as equals, true equals, not as vassals begging for approval." "We understand," the representative said. "That's all we ask, a chance to start again, to do better." The negotiations took years. Trade agreements were carefully crafted. Technology was exchanged under strict terms. Slowly, carefully, humanity began to re-engage with the Milky Way, but always on their own terms, always as equals, always with the understanding that Andromeda was their home now and nothing would change that. Daughter, now grown with children of her own, stood where her mother had stood years before, looking up at 3 moons she had always known. She had never seen Earth, had never walked under a single moon. To her and her generation, Andromeda wasn't a new beginning. It was simply home. And that thought, watching the young people of New Terra go about their lives, was exactly as it should be. The Council had responded seconds too slow. Humanity had already left, and in leaving they had found something better than they had ever imagined possible. Freedom, growth, a future written by their own hands.